The world of gangster rap was shaken once again when the performer known as Notorious B.I.G. was killed. For 28 years, his murder haunted hip-hop like a mystery that refused to be solved. His death led to many conspiracy theories, growing rivalries, and a long list of unanswered questions. Biggie was shot 4 times, and what stood out was that there were no burn marks or signs of a close-range shot, suggesting that the gunman fired from a distance. Fans kept demanding justice, but the lap remained silent the night Biggie died. Now, in 2025, a former detective has finally come forward with the truth. He revealed who killed Biggie and why. The revelation is not just shocking, it confirms what many have feared and whispered for years. The truth is painful. Biggie's case, after nearly 3 decades, is finally solved. On the night of March 8, 1997, Los Angeles was buzzing with excitement and star power. The Soul Train Music Awards had just ended, bringing celebrities and music legends to the city. Among them was Christopher Wallace, known to the world as Notorious B.I.G. It was his first big public event on the West Coast since Tupac Shakur had been killed 6 months earlier. Despite the lingering tension between the East Coast and West Coast rap scenes, Biggie came to promote peace and his new double album, Life After Death. Later that night, he attended a Vibe magazine after-party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. He arrived with his friend and producer, Sean Puffy Combs, and their group of friends and security. Security at the event was strict, but the mood was cheerful. Biggie was seen laughing, taking photos, and mingling confidently. He appeared relaxed and content with his rising fame. But everything changed shortly after midnight. Around 12:45 a.m. on March 9, Biggie and his team decided to leave the party. They got into a line of vehicles, with Biggie sitting in the front passenger seat of a dark green GMC Suburban. Puffy's car was ahead of his, and security cars followed behind. The streets were surprisingly busy for that time of night. As Biggie's vehicle stopped at a red light at the intersection of Fairfax Avenue and Wilshire Boulevard, no one imagined that danger was seconds away. Suddenly, a black Chevy Impala pulled up next to Biggie's car. Witnesses said the car moved slowly and deliberately before stopping beside Biggie's SUV. From the driver's side window, a lone gunman fired a 9mm pistol. 4 bullets hit Biggie. He collapsed in his seat, seriously wounded. His driver rushed him to Cedar-Sinai Medical Center, just minutes away, with the rest of the security team in close pursuit. Paramedics tried to save him, but he died at 1:15 a.m. He was only 24 years old. The shooting happened in front of many witnesses, but the killer disappeared. People gave different versions of what they saw. Some said the shooter wore a bow tie. Others described how quickly the car escaped. A nearby bank's security camera may have caught the scene, but the video was too blurry and far away to clearly see the shooter's face. The black Impala vanished into the night, never found again. What made the situation even more intense was the timing. Just 6 months earlier, Tupac had been killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. He was also 25 years old. Now both of the biggest names in hip-hop were dead, killed in similar ways. To fans and the public, this didn't seem like a coincidence. People believed the 2 murders were connected. Speculation exploded. Fans, journalists, and conspiracy theorists started pointing fingers. Was it payback? A gang-related hit? A move by a powerful music label? The tragedy became even more chilling when people remembered that Biggie had just spoken in an interview days earlier, saying he wanted peace and was moving past the East Coast versus West Coast fight. His album was titled Life After Death, and after he died, the name felt like an eerie prediction. Everyone asked the same question: who killed Biggie Smalls? As sadness turned into anger, many began digging deeper into the rivalry that had caused so much pain in the rap community. They hoped to find the truth hidden in the feud between the East and West Coasts, which had once turned friends into enemies. Before the shootings and betrayals, Biggie and Tupac had been close friends. In the early 1990s, they were more than just fellow artists. Tupac had helped Biggie by letting him sleep on his couch and giving him tips on performing. For a short time, it seemed like the East and West were united through their friendship. But things changed quickly. On November 30, 1994, in New York City, Tupac arrived at Quad Recording Studios for a session. As he entered the lobby, he was suddenly attacked by 3 armed men who shot him 5 times. He survived the attack, but it changed him forever. Within hours, Tupac believed that the attack was not random. He was convinced he had been set up and that the people who invited him to the studio knew what would happen. At the time, Biggie and Puffy were already inside the studio. Tupac didn't think this was a coincidence. He suspected they had something to do with the attack or knew it was going to happen. Even though Biggie and Puffy denied having anything to do with the shooting, Tupac lost all trust in them. From that moment, he saw them not as friends but as enemies. Soon after, Tupac was sent to prison for a different case. While in prison, his anger and paranoia grew worse. When he got out in 1995 and signed with Death Row Records, the East Coast versus West Coast feud got even more dangerous. In 1996, Tupac released a song called Hit 'Em Up, which became one of the most aggressive diss tracks in hip-hop history. In the song, he claimed to have slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, and attacked Puffy and Bad Boy Records. It was no longer just about music. It was personal. The feud grew out of control, turning into a full-blown war between Death Row and Bad Boy, Los Angeles, and New York, Suge Knight and Puffy. The rivalry took over the media, radio stations, and award shows. Fans picked sides as the media fueled the fire. Behind the scenes, things became even more dangerous. At the 1995 Source Awards, tensions exploded. Insults, threats, and anger filled the room. It felt like something terrible was coming. That fear became real when Tupac was shot in Las Vegas on September 13, 1996. He died 6 days later. Though no one proved Biggie was involved, many believed Tupac's death was part of the East-West feud. People whispered that Biggie's name might be linked to the attack. So when Biggie was killed just 6 months later, many thought it was retaliation. People believed his death was revenge for Tupac. With both rap legends gone, the questions only grew, and a terrifying pattern had formed. But instead of getting closer to the truth, the investigation into Biggie's death started to fall apart. In the days after Biggie was murdered, fans thought the police would act quickly. After all, he was one of the most famous rappers in the world, killed in a busy part of Los Angeles, with security and witnesses nearby. But no arrests were made. Weeks turned into months. Behind the scenes, the lapped investigation was collapsing. From the beginning, the case was disorganized. Important leads were ignored. Witnesses weren't properly questioned. Some evidence was lost or not handled correctly. One big problem was fear. People inside the lapped were scared of what they might find. There were rumors that some police officers might have been involved in Biggie's murder or had connections to Death Row Records. Because of that fear, the investigation slowed down. What started as whispers turned into real accusations. Journalists and insiders began saying that lapped officers might be linked to the crime. But no one took these claims to court. Instead of solving the case, the investigation became colder each year. In 2002, Biggie's mother, Voletta Wallace, and his ex-wife, Faith Evans, filed a civil lawsuit against the lapped. They accused the department of being corrupt, careless, and of hiding the truth about rogue officers who may have been involved in the murder. The lawsuit included serious claims, like how some lapped officials destroyed important documents and stopped internal investigations to protect the department's image. But the legal system didn't move forward. The case wasn't dismissed because the claims were false, but because of legal issues and lack of help. In 2007, they filed another lawsuit, this time with new witnesses and more claims of a cover-up. But this case also got thrown out before anything was proven in court. Even the FBI got involved in the early 2000s. They tried to investigate Biggie's murder, but like the lapped, they eventually gave up. They said there wasn't enough evidence and that local authorities weren't helping. For Biggie's family, all of this was more than disappointing. It was heartbreaking. They watched as the case faded into history without justice. Years passed, and still, no one was arrested. The music world had lost a legend, but those responsible were still out there. And while the fans continued to remember Biggie through his music, the truth about his death remained buried until now. In 2025, after 28 long years of silence and speculation, a former detective came forward with new information. What he revealed was not only shocking but confirmed many of the theories people had whispered about for decades. The truth was dark and disturbing. It reached deep into the world of music, crime, and corruption. It finally provided an answer to the question fans had been asking since that night in 1997: who killed Biggie Smalls? But even with this new information, many still wonder if full justice will ever be served. The pain of Biggie's loss never truly went away. His voice and lyrics still echo through time, reminding the world of a young man whose talent was taken far too soon. And as the final pieces of the mystery fall into place, the legacy of the Notorious B.I.G. continues to grow, not just as a rapper, but as a symbol of a generation that lived through the rise and fall of hip-hop's most dangerous feud. Valetta Wallace, the mother of the famous rapper Notorious B.I.G., once said during an emotional interview, "They know who killed my son. But they won't do anything about it because too many secrets would come out." Her words reflected the pain and frustration she had carried for years. Even though Biggie was murdered in 1997, for more than 2 decades, the police officially kept the case open. But despite that, no one was arrested or charged. People began to lose hope. It started to feel like the justice system was more interested in protecting certain powerful people than actually finding the truth. And while no one was punished, countless rumors and theories grew stronger. People came up with lists of suspects, possible reasons for the murder, and guesses about what really happened. The case became a mystery full of shadows, secrets, and questions that never had answers. At the heart of many of these rumors was Suge Knight, the powerful and feared co-founder of Death Row Records. Suge was the boss of another famous rapper, Tupac Shakur. At the time, there was a dangerous rivalry going on between East Coast and West Coast rappers. Biggie, who was from Brooklyn, was one of the top stars of the East Coast, while Tupac and Suge represented the West Coast. Just 6 months before Biggie's murder, Tupac was shot and killed. Many people believed that Tupac was ambushed and killed by enemies from the East Coast music scene. Some believed Suge Knight was angry about Tupac's death and wanted revenge. That's why some people thought he might have ordered Biggie's murder. Suge always denied it. He said those rumors were false and had no proof. But the suspicion around him never really went away. Then there were the stories about corrupt police officers. Some former officers in the LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department, were believed to have secret ties to Suge Knight and Death Row Records. One name that kept coming up was David Mack. He was a former LAPD officer who, in 1997, was arrested and convicted for organizing a bank robbery. That alone shocked many people. But it didn't stop there. David Mack had connections to local gangs, a flashy lifestyle, and a love for expensive cars, especially black Chevy Impalas. That detail was especially important because Biggie was killed in a drive-by shooting, and witnesses said the shooter was driving a black Chevy Impala. A journalist named Chuck Phillips and a former detective named Russell Poole strongly believed that David Mack had something to do with Biggie's murder. Maybe he helped plan it, or maybe he even helped carry it out. But many people asked, why would a police officer risk everything to do something like that? According to Poole, Mack had a few strong reasons. He was extremely loyal to Suge Knight and the gang world that surrounded Death Row Records. Helping get rid of Biggie could have earned him a lot of money. It also could have helped him gain protection and respect from powerful people in the music industry and the streets. And in that world, where money, power, and loyalty often meant life or death, Mack had a lot to gain by getting involved. When he was convicted for the bank robbery, it only made people more suspicious. Then came another name, Amir Muhammad. He was a friend of David Mack's. Detective Russell Poole believed Amir was the one who actually pulled the trigger and shot Biggie. Poole said that Amir matched the description given by witnesses. He also had connections to both Mack and Death Row Records. However, Amir always denied the accusation and was never arrested. The police never found enough solid proof to take the investigation further. It remained just another theory, floating in a sea of speculation. And then there were the wild rumors that Biggie's own label boss and friend, Sean Puff Daddy Combs, now known as Diddy, might have had a hidden motive. Some fringe theories suggested there were problems between Biggie and Diddy, maybe over money or insurance. But most investigators said these claims were not believable. There was never any real proof. Even so, Diddy's presence near Biggie on the night of the murder kept people talking and wondering. Conspiracy theories love a mystery, and Diddy was too close to the story for people to ignore. The mystery of Biggie's death kept drawing attention. Documentaries, books, TV shows, and news reports continued to look into what happened. One well-known documentary, Biggie and Tupac by Nick Broomfield, was released in 2002. Another popular TV series, Unsolved, The Murders of Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G., aired in 2018. Both focused heavily on the theory involving David Mack, Amir Muhammad, and the idea that lapped corruption played a big role. Detective Russell Poole, who had worked on the case early on, said that when his investigation started to point toward other police officers, his superiors shut him down. They didn't want him to dig any deeper. These claims were controversial, but they made many people wonder, was someone trying to keep the truth hidden? Despite all these theories and names, no one was ever convicted. The case stayed officially unsolved. That was until, finally, a major development happened. A key insider, someone who had been involved in the case at a high level, stepped forward with the most detailed and believable explanation of what really happened to Biggie. A man named Greg Kading, who used to be a detective with the Lapped, announced that the case was finally solved. After 28 years of confusion, his findings told the full story. Kading had not worked on the case when Biggie was first murdered. He was brought in during the late 2000s as part of a special joint task force between local police and federal agents. The goal was to find out what really happened to both Tupac and Biggie without the lies, corruption, and cover-ups that had hurt the original investigations. What Kading found shocked many people. Based on what he learned from confidential sources, interviews, and official statements, the man who killed Biggie Smalls was not David Mack or Amir Muhammad. It was a gang member named Wardell Poochie Faus. He belonged to the mob Piru Bloods gang and was very close to Suge Knight. Poochie wasn't just any gang member. He was someone Suge had trusted before when he needed a job done quietly. Even though Suge Knight was in jail at the time of Biggie's murder, Kading discovered that didn't stop him from giving orders. According to Kading, Suge used a woman who visited him in jail to pass along his orders. She pretended to be his legal assistant, so her visits weren't monitored. That allowed Suge to speak freely. This woman later gave a confidential statement to both the Lapped and the FBI in 2009. She said that Suge had told her directly to help plan Biggie's murder. She admitted she passed Suge's instructions to Poochie and helped make sure he was paid for carrying out the hit. In Kading's words, the murder was not about business. It was about revenge. Suge blamed the East Coast for Tupac's death even though Biggie had nothing to do with it and he wanted to send a message. According to Kading's book Murder Rap, the case was solved. He believed there was enough evidence to be sure. Multiple people backed up Kading's story. One of the biggest supporters was Suge Knight's former girlfriend, the same woman who had passed on the orders. When Kading first released these findings back in 2009, some people were skeptical. But as time passed, more investigators, reporters, and experts began to see Kading's version as the truth. By 2025, his story became the one most people believed. Kading said over and over again, "We know who did it." He wasn't just guessing. He had evidence. But despite all this, no one was arrested. Why not? The biggest reason is that Wardell Poochie Faus, the man Kading said pulled the trigger, was already dead. He had been shot and killed in 2003 while riding his motorcycle in Compton. Without him alive, there could be no trial, no confession, no chance for a legal ending. And there were more problems. The woman who helped investigators earlier, the one who gave her statement, refused to testify in court later. Her story was important, but without her willing to speak publicly, it became very hard to use her information as legal evidence. On top of that, Suge Knight is already serving a 28-year prison sentence for a completely different crime, a hit-and-run incident in 2015 that resulted in a man's death. Some law enforcement officials believe that's enough. In their eyes, the man behind Biggie's murder is already locked up. There are also political reasons for staying silent. The Lapt and FBI don't seem eager to talk about the case or confirm Kading's findings. Why? Because admitting the truth could reopen old wounds. The original investigation had been accused of corruption and cover-ups. Admitting those mistakes now could lead to lawsuits, possibly from Biggie's family, and more damage to the reputation of the police. No one wants that. Compared to Tupac's case, which saw new developments in 2023 with the arrest of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, Biggie's case had fewer chances of going to court. Keefe D. was still alive, and enough witnesses were willing to talk. But in Biggie's case, the shooter is dead and the key witness won't cooperate. Also, no one in power seems willing to bring back attention to a case that could cause more problems for the Lapt. For many people, it looks like the justice system simply chose to let the case fade away. Still, for Biggie's family, friends, and fans, the truth matters. And even if no one is arrested, knowing what really happened can bring some peace. Biggie's mother, Valetta Wallace, has spent years fighting for justice. She has worked hard to keep her son's name alive. His widow, singer Faith Evans, and his friend and producer Puff Daddy, Diddy, also honored him in their music. Their song I'll Be Missing You became a powerful tribute that touched people all over the world. It was played on radios everywhere and became an anthem of love and loss. Biggie's music never faded. His first album, Ready to Die, told the raw, honest story of a young man growing up in Brooklyn. His second album, Life After Death, came out just weeks after he was murdered. That album became one of the most respected rap albums in history. Both albums are still listened to today, and they continue to inspire rappers, musicians, and fans around the world. In 2020, Biggie was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, an incredible honor, especially for a rapper. It confirmed what many people already believed: Biggie wasn't just a talented artist. He was a cultural icon. His children, C.J. Wallace and Tiana Wallace, have also helped keep their father's legacy alive. Even though they aren't musicians like him, they've worked on documentaries, business ventures, and events that honor his life and story. And now that people like Greg Kading have finally put the pieces together, the truth about Biggie's death is clearer than ever. No, there may never be a courtroom trial. There may never be an arrest. But the truth has come to light. In the end, what matters most is not just how Biggie died, but how he lived. Through every verse he wrote, every beat he rapped over, and every person he inspired, Biggie's spirit lives on. In Brooklyn, and across the world, people still play his music loud, proud, and with love. The King of New York may be gone, but his voice, his story, and his impact will never be forgotten.